Welcome everyone to this afternoon's Lunch and Learn experience hosted by Care Partners, which you're going to learn a little bit more about in just a minute. And Messiah Lutheran Church is also hosting this event through our Second Family Care Group, which is part of Care Partners. We're glad you can be with us. We're going to be talking about some of the stresses that we're dealing with in these COVID days. And we will be finding ways to help us cope the stresses of caregiving and also with the stresses of isolation that we're all experiencing. I hope that you're all, well, obviously you have electricity. I hope you have water in your home. I hope you're safe and warm. And if I could, I'd like to start with just a very brief blessing. Gracious God, we thank you for the ability to come together to support one another in being caregivers. We pray that you would use us to be your hands and feet. Thank you, God. Amen. And I would like now to introduce Darian Jones. Darian is the educational supervisor. I don't know your title, Darian. I'm sorry. She puts together educational events for Care Partners, and she can tell you about that organization. And again, thank you for being here today, Darian.
Thank you so much, Lynette. We're so excited to be able to be here and help provide this little workshop for everyone. We're so glad that everyone is able to join us, and we will be recording the presentation, so anyone who wasn't able to make it will still receive a copy of it. So Care Partners, I'll briefly tell you about us a little bit, and then I'll tell you a little bit about our speakers. So Care Partners is a nonprofit organization here in Houston. We provide free support, education, and resources to family caregivers and their loved ones. Normally, we have a few in-person programs, but we've kind of switched things to be online for now. One of the main things that we do is these caregiver conferences and workshops. So we're so excited again just to be here, and we hope you can attend some more of these because we're going to do a series of 3. So we'll have a few more topics coming over in the next couple months. And then we also have Care Partners is doing some online full-length conferences. So we have with multiple topics and multiple speakers. And this year we're really excited because we're going to be trying to make it a lot more engaging. We're adding a thing called what we're calling conversation circles. So you'll have a chance to break out into smaller rooms and meet with the area professionals or the people that we have who are being our speakers, and even some sponsors. So you can really get help and have your questions answered and talk to the experts about what you're wondering about. So we're really excited to bring that this year. And today's topic is going to be all about combating COVID fatigue and the impact of isolation on caregivers. So our speakers are from the Alzheimer's Association. We're really glad that they were able to be here. Denise Gibson, I'm going to have her tell you a little bit about herself in just a minute. And Sana Ali is also here. She's going to be doing the slideshow and sharing some resources as well. So I guess I'll go ahead and bring them up, and I'll have them introduce themselves a little bit. Hi, Denise.
Hi, Darian. My name is Denise Gibson. I am a community educator for the Alzheimer's Association. I've actually volunteered for the Alzheimer's Association for probably over 20 years. I think it's an amazing organization and very helpful for people who are caring for their loved ones at home who have dementia. So I'm happy to be here. I do work in a community, so I see this firsthand every day. So I am excited to talk to you all about what happens in communities as well as what's happening in your home. So we're gonna hopefully answer a lot of questions today and learn a little something. So
thanks. Sana, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself real quick?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. I'm Sana Ali with the Alzheimer's Association. So I work in the Care and Support Department, which really similarly to Care Partners also offers a ton of education programs. We have support groups and early stage programs. So a lot of caregiver support resources as well as conferences for professionals. So I mean, we wouldn't be able to do this work without our amazing volunteers and community educators. So just wanted to thank Denise for being on today.
Yes, thank you both. I'm pretty much, I guess we'll go ahead and turn it over to you guys, and we'll get started with the thing today.
Great.
Thank you all again.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then Denise, if you could let me know when we're ready to go.
Yeah,
perfect.
We're good. COVID-19 and caregiving. So let's go to the next one. It kind of gives an overview. in the agenda. So we're going to talk about COVID-19 and dementia, tips for caregivers, and then some of the resources the Alzheimer's Association offers. So COVID-19 and dementia. People with dementia are actually at an increased risk of COVID-19. There are dementia-related behaviors, increased age, and common health conditions that often accompany the dementia with increased risk. They are having an immune-compromised system. So along with that comes in the hygienics, right? So people with dementia may forget to wash their hands, or trying to put a mask on someone who has dementia can be very difficult at times. And then, people with dementia who may be sick as well are coughing out into the air and can't, remember to put their arm. It's basic things that we understand, but they forget. And COVID-19 may worsen the cognitive impairment, right? Because within any infection, just like any infection, UTI, things like that, we're going to see an increased cognitive decline. So the confusion starts to get a little worse. And as you all know, that when that happens, you're reaching out to the doctor because something is probably acutely happening. So we'll go to the next one. I'm not going to go through all these, but there is a section at alz.org, hashtag COVID-19, that are going to talk about these tips we're going to discuss just now. There are a few extra ones that we won't have in this presentation that you can go through and look it up and really study it if you please. So if we go to the next one. All right, tips for caregivers at home. You want to follow the CDC guidelines just like we do. So you want to keep up to date on what's going on. So individuals living with dementia may need that extra support, right? For the hygienic practices we talked about. And a lot of times with language becoming more difficult, processing becoming more difficult, you know how important it is for them to wash their hands, but they don't get it. And they're not going to do sometimes what you want them to do. So you have to get clever. So what it would be more of is walk with me, you show them to the sink, you let the water run, you may say to them, feel the warm water, right? As they're doing this, you're washing their hands. You can demonstrate for them and maybe they'll mimic you in that early stages of the disease. You could say, show me how you used to have your kids wash their hands. Anything that's going to spur them to want to do what you need them to do. Because this is a very important practice during COVID-19 and other, as well as influenza and other diseases. So you can do hand sanitizer with a minimum of 60% alcohol. Can be an alternative, obviously, if you can't get them to the sink. Please attempt the hand sanitizer at least. So if a rapid increase of confusion happens, you want to be talking to your doctor. COVID-19 looks almost like a UTI in people with dementia. So let me just pull this up for you. I have it on my phone. We use it at the community. Some of the things we see are that increased confusion, but it's still a sudden change, okay? Alzheimer's disease is a very slow progression, and any acute changes we see, we're often talking to our healthcare provider anyway. And typically 99% of the time, we're looking at a UTI unless the person has fallen and hurt themselves and got back up, things like that. You might start to see with people with dementia and COVID, they might have a blank stare or a flat affect. They may start to have trouble with their normal ADLs or, all toileting, dressing themselves. All of a sudden, they're a little more confused. They might have a decrease in appetite. So you want to be documenting these. They might have an increase or decrease of thirst. They may be breathing faster, less energy, and unusual smell or color in their urine, right? Which typically looks just like a UTI. So we want to be very mindful that we're communicating with our doctors. You want to make sure that you request prescriptions for a greater number of days. People are tending to do that because they don't want you out in public, right? The less contact you have with people, unfortunately, the less chances of you contracting the disease, right? And it kind of helps by getting your prescriptions days and days in advance. Making alternative plans for adult day and respite, like Care Partners. Unfortunately, when those places close down, that pressure gets put back on the caregiver. And so what used to be a respite opportunity has now been taken away from you guys. And you have to learn to establish a new routine in the home, right? Where they're used to going to the certain place 3 times a week. Now all of a sudden that stops and it disrupts their routine. It's important to get the person with dementia in a new routine as quickly as possible. And that can be very exhausting. But writing out a plan for the day within the home is important. You know, you have to, if you want to start a routine of, you know, if you used to go to McDonald's for coffee 3 times a week and in the bookstore 2 times a week, you're going to start doing drive-throughs, maybe going to a park, maybe establishing a library setting in the home. You're going to have to start to get a little more clever to get them through their day during this time. And make alternative plans if primary caregiver becomes ill. This is very, very important for you all because caregivers do not think of themselves at all. Like typically, you know, they don't think of themselves going down. Well, what if you end up with COVID-19? What's the plan B for you? So is that tapping into people who are at the church or family members? Somehow you're going to have to isolate yourself from the person to try and mitigate the exposure to them, that kind of thing. So really have a thought in your head about what would happen if this were to occur. The good thing that's ever going to come out of COVID, and this is what it's been a blessing, is a telemed, right? So now we can call our doctors and get them on video, which is huge because so many times caregivers won't go to their own doctor appointments because they can't bring their loved one who has dementia. It's a hard ordeal. They're worried they're going to leave that waiting room. There's always that stress. So caregivers decide they're not going to go. So this is a huge game changer for people caring for their loved ones at home because now both the caregiver and the person with dementia can have their visits via phone call or FaceTime, which will be super helpful in the coming years, even after COVID is gone. Okay, next. Okay, so tips for caregivers of individuals in residential care. You check with the administration regarding procedures managing COVID-19 risks. So we are given guidance from the CDC. Some communities can be more strict than others, right? So you want to know what their guidelines are. And so on. So you want to ensure that the residence that your person is in has multiple emergency contact numbers for you. Do not visit if experiencing any symptoms of COVID, obviously, or any kind of illness, which you will most likely be screened as you come in, and they will ask you, do you have any symptoms of COVID-19? If you're unable to visit due to illness or lockdown, ask staff how to maintain contact. So if you have a loved one who is in a community right now, I work in one, and I'll never forget March 13th and of the day of which they shut down our community and we could no longer let family members in. And that is a day that was very difficult for all of us, not just the family members, but now the staff. We started to carry the weight of the families, right? Because we're there and the families cannot come in. So we've established things like FaceTiming, Zoom meetings, any kind of Google Duo, any kind of technology became a big factor in this to keep people connected. We started opening it up to window visits. And then we started outdoor visits where you have to be 6 feet apart and you have to wear masks. And then we started with plexiglass inside, right? Still in masks, still 6 feet apart in a specific room. And then they eventually came to essential caregivers where you would have to have a COVID test 14 days before coming to the first visit. And then you become one of us. So you wear the same masks we wear. Your stipulations are the same as ours. You want to keep a distance, but at this time you're in the room with the person and you have a chance to touch them, right? And then, so you just have to reach out to the community to find out what it is, because if someone in the building has COVID-19, you're not allowed in anyway, right? If a staff member has COVID-19, they may eliminate everything but essential caregivers. So things are always changing. So it's really important that you're checking in with the administration and keeping them on your speed dial, because you want updates all the time. There's nothing worse than feeling so helpless when you're a person with dementia is in a community and you cannot come in and put your eyes on them. So it's important to keep that relationship going and understand that the people inside are doing the best they can to keep them at a level they can. So next slide. Residential care incidents considerations. So you want it before you move your loved one in, right? Ask the residents about their quarantine procedures. Right now, you're able to come get your loved one if they wear their masks, take them out for the day and bring them back. If you stay overnight, it's a 14-day quarantine coming back. If you bring them back the same day, there's a list of questions we have to ask. We have to retake their temperature. We have to change their clothes. We have to wash them immediately, all of these things that are put into place. You want to know the level of confidence that the CDC guidelines are being followed. So you want to ask what type of screening questions they have. You want to ask what's the policy if a staff member comes down positive, how often are the residents going to be tested, things like that. These salespeople in these communities have to tell you, but I want you all to be very specific. So if you're going to ask, do you have any current cases? They may say no, thinking you're asking residents, but there may be a staff member. So you want to ask specifically, do you have any COVID-19 staff member positive? Do you have any COVID-19 residents positive? That kind of thing, okay? So just be very mindful that you very much ask direct questions. And then, is your family member able to follow social distancing procedures with or without help? People with dementia don't have that ability to know what 6 feet of distance means. So it becomes a little difficult. In the memory care that I work, I eliminated the couch and some of other things and literally strategically placed chairs 6 feet apart, because it's hard to redirect someone with dementia. They don't understand why they can't sit there. So you just eliminate it all together. They have one place to sit and they're happy as they can be. You want to know about the personal protective equipment. Do they have enough masks? Do they have enough PPE as far as gowns and gloves, things like that? How many staff members interact with your family member on a regular basis? What's the ratio of staff to residents? Always a good question to ask anyway. And then are they adequately staffed, provided the level of care? So you want to make sure that they have staff. But the thing is that if the outbreak happens with staff, things may change, right? Because those staff members cannot come into the building. So you just want to see where they're at that moment in time. It's very, very important to ask the questions, see what happens when. I think it's important to ask too, like, are these staff members strictly for the people in the certain buildings, right? Do they work with the same people every day? Because that'll be helpful to know in any kind of tracing situation. So next one. Okay. There is no moving to another location, so you choose to move them in. There's no way to know whether the new residents will remain COVID-free or not, right? We had a resident who moved from our place to another place due to financial issues. And the day before she was supposed to move into the other community, they shut down due to COVID. They had 6 residents come down positive with COVID-19, and that was the day before her moving day. So be mindful that and be flexible when things like this happen. You want to ask, are they accepting new residents? And they will be if they're COVID-free, right? If they don't have any residents with COVID-19, they're able to accept new residents. Have there been COVID-19 cases at the new facility? For sure, you can ask that. Pretty much everybody's been touched by this. And it's the matter of how we're able to deal with it, right? So some places like where I work, we had a COVID unit. So we were able to move the resident to a COVID unit on campus so that mitigated the exposure to the other people who have memory care issues, right? And then ask many of the same questions you would ask on the previous slides, right? The procedures, the staffing, all of that, you want to know what the deal is when you're moving them in. But just remember, things are changing all the time. So if you decide that your loved one's at a community and you want to bring them home, right? There are things that you need to think about. There are things you want to be able to go through, right? So what level of care does the person need? Be very realistic to this. Is your family able to provide level of care needed? Assess the number of people needed to provide adequate care while limiting the number of people, because the more people you bring into your home, the more exposure they have to COVID-19. Does anyone in the family have COVID, obviously, or showing possible symptoms? Are there people at home that work outside the home? That's another, they're going to be exposed to a whole nother group of people that could possibly bring it home. And will you need to hire home care workers? So if you go to the next slide, it talks about the risk is still there. It's not like you're going to take them out of a community and then, you know, there's not going to be any type of exposure. Can you go back one to working with the in-home? Did you miss one? Yeah, there's one in between I have on mine, which I want to talk about. So if it's not on your Asana, that's okay. But we talk about the temperature check. See, it's not on that one.
I think this is the updated one. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I want to, I'm just going to touch on it unless it's the next. No, it wouldn't be the next slide. So I wanted to kind of talk about, if you do bring in home care people, you know, you want to have a system of temping them when they come in. You want them to have, at a community like mine, we are 99 and 99.6 and higher, they're not allowed in. At home, they talk about 100.4 or higher, and you're not allowed to let them in. You shouldn't let them in, right? So taking their temperature and having like a little notebook there or, you know, a little folder that you have a list of symptoms, make sure they're symptom free before you let them in your home. I think it's important that they're wearing a mask. You can decide what mask that's going to be, whether it's an N95 or a surgical mask. You decide, it's your home, right? You can follow the CDC guidelines, but then you have your own policies of your home. So you can choose to talk with the company about that as well. Okay. All right, activities at home. It's important that you create a simple daily plan. Obviously, we know with dementia that doesn't always get followed, right? Some things may come up during the day. You just want to kind of have a guideline so that you're able to have a structure, a routine, and it should be the same, almost the same thing every day, right? Because a person with dementia thrives off a routine. So if they have a little coffee chat with you at 10 o'clock every morning, try and keep that going and get that day started well. Or if you go for a walk first thing in the morning, keep that going every day because they thrive on that. Keep the skills and abilities in mind. Make sure they're not giving them too much to do or it's over their head, because they will get frustrated and check out. The same as if you give them something too low, they're going to say this is for babies, right? So you want to kind of go with the flow through your day. If it's set in the after lunch, you're going to go for a ride in the car, do that every day. And focus on enjoyment, not achievement. So if they enjoy, you know, setting the table for dinner every night, but it's all wrong, you're just going to thank them so much, have them sit in the living room, then go behind them and change it to where you need it to be, right? We're not looking for that. We're looking for how they can help around the house, how they can, you know, give to their environment kind of thing. So please give them the opportunity to do that. And then be mindful of exposures of upsetting content. Like the news is so scary these days that I would try and stay away from that, because sometimes people with dementia can take that and get extreme anxiety. You have to watch television shows that may have violence and they take it as reality. Things like that. Make sure you're, you know, I think the best is, you know, musicals and old time movies that, you know, don't have a whole lot of violence in them are good to do. But finding that new routine at home. And I look forward to hearing from you guys at the end of this to see what you have done a year into this and how you've adapted is going to be very interesting to me, and I think others on this call. So it will be really good to hear from you. Next slide. So caregiver stress. This is a hard time. We in the communities, we are caregivers too, right? We just care for more people in an environment that I have an 8-hour shift. I get to go home at the end of the day. It's nothing the same as what you guys go through where you're in it 24/7. This job is extremely hard. It wears on the caregiver like no other. And we felt it too within the communities because we haven't had our support systems like our family members, like our volunteers, like our entertainers that typically came in. Outside vendors are now, we've lost some due to their companies not letting them come in at the very beginning. So it's been difficult, and there is caregiver stress, and 10 symptoms of that are denial, anger, social withdrawal, anxiety, depression, exhaustion, sleeplessness, irritability, lack of concentration, and health problems. All of these come into play when people are under extreme stress, and people who are caring for loved ones with dementia are under extreme stress. You're trying to get ahead of this disease moment to moment throughout the day. You want them to stay calm. You want them to stay in the house. You want them not to put soap in their mouth. There's so many things you all have to deal with that no one understands unless you're in it, right? There's so many things that you have to keep your eye on the ball, and that's exhausting to do 24/7. So it's important to look at how you can maintain yourself as a caregiver, because if you go down, you're not being able to care for your loved one, right? And that's your ultimate goal. Your ultimate goal is you've been married to this person for 50 odd years. You were going to take care of them to the end of life. You have a father you're taking care of. You're wanting to take care of them. But if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of them, if that makes sense. So it's important that you ask for help. I always like to start with this one because you have to ask for help. Caregivers are notorious in saying, I'm good. There's nothing wrong. I'm fine. I don't need anything. And so I often tell people who are your secondary kind of caregivers to just go with a list and say, okay, I need, here, I'm going to take dad for an hour today. You go do something. Either that's walk around the block or take some time to meditate or to read or anything like that. We're trying to teach other family members to care for the caregiver, if that makes sense. Because if the caregiver can no longer do the job, it makes it difficult, right? So we want to make sure that the caregivers are staying connected. They're attending support groups. Support groups are not always like boohoo crying all the time. We laugh. I mean, I've been in support groups where they just develop this family of people who are in the same situations, or they've been through it already. And so you're learning tips from them. And by the end of this, every single caregiver is amazing at caring for loved ones with dementia. We make mistakes along the way. We get up and we figure it out. You're very strong people, but you need to ask for help. You cannot do this alone. So it's important that you're taking care of yourself. Looking at the resources that we have for the Alzheimer's Association, reaching out to people, learning as much as you possibly can about the disease, it's going to be key to the success of it all. So go ahead. So I want to talk a little bit about the resources. They do have a 24/7 helpline, right? It's 1-800-272-3900, and that's 24/7. If your loved one's up in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock wanting to leave the house because he has to get to the bank, call the 1-800 number, right? They can walk you through what it needs to be done. But they also are a place where you can get information or learn about the support groups or classes that are going to become available. It's completely free. They have a translation service of over 200 languages. It's a really important number for you all to have, and don't be afraid to use it. You have a master's level person on the other end of the phone that can help you navigate through what's going on. Okay, next. We also offer the virtual programs at alz.org. You put in your zip code and they'll show you what's up. We do the 10 warning signs, understanding Alzheimer's and dementia. Having those dementia conversations early on are key, right? So that you know what you're doing moving forward and how you can respect your person, what their wishes were. Effective communication strategies. There's the legal and financial. Understanding and responding to dementia care behaviors is a big one. We get a lot of response for that one too. And then it says here we have transitioned in-person support groups and education programs to virtual platforms. So we're still online, right? Until we know it's safe to be around or in spaces that are going to be safe for everybody. Next. The Community Resource Finder is a great one because you can go there and find your programs and events and what's being offered. You can find out if you need places to know what companies are out there for care at home, community services, housing options, like if you want to put them in a community, what's out there and things like that. And then medical services as well. It's all under that Community Resource Finder. It's great. And then the Alzheimer's Connected. It's kind of like a forum of people who get together and they can kind of help each other out. You can get on there without creating a profile and just watch and listen and not, you can read and kind of identify, but if you want to be engaging in it, you need to go on and make a profile and get in properly. And then you can go into an early onset Alzheimer's or the early stage early onset Alzheimer's disease, or you can go into the early stage groups of people who are just starting out. They used to have one for teens. This affects the whole family, so it would be a good one to kind of go in and check it out. Next. Alzheimer's Navigator. This is where it can create this personalized program for you. So you go in and it helps caregivers to answers by creating a personalized action plan and linking you to information and support for local resources on your own. So it's a really nice one to be able to just go in. You already pop up what you need because you've put all the information in. And that is about it. So what I want to do is I want to kind of open it up for questions. We didn't really touch on a whole lot of social isolation. There is obvious isolation that comes along with this. Every time we have a resident who tests positive, our residents have to go into their rooms. And they are quarantined, which is very difficult for the person with dementia because you are breaking their routine. When this first happened, all of a sudden their families were being taken away. They didn't see their families anymore. Our first case, we had everybody in their rooms for quarantine, and it wasn't even in our building, right? But you take away their peers, so they don't know why they're not allowed to come out of their rooms. We started to see the early stage people do a lot of mimicking in that stage because the dining process is 3 times a day, right? And most likely it's very subtle. They're watching their neighbor eat. So they kind of get clues and they mimic their table partner. That was taken away. So we saw a lot of people just stop, stare at their food and not know what to do next, right? Because now they're in-room dining. Their caregivers are now wearing masks. They don't understand what's going on. They're just doing what they're told. They're eating off of paper plates and forks. And it's very difficult time. And then we found that after that, we had it for quite a while. We had to then redirect them out of their rooms. They got so comfortable in their rooms, in their environment, that now to try and redirect them out was very difficult. So it's very interesting. I would love to hear more about what happens at home. But yeah, if we can open it up to questions, Darian, that would be great.
Yeah, so I'm gonna stop the sharing screen and see if I can pull everyone up and then unmute everyone so we can kind of just have a discussion with everyone. So one thing I wanted to ask is just what's everyone's situations kind of like? So do you have a family member who's in a home, or are you taking care of them at home right now?
Darian, what are some of the things you have seen in your community? When do you get
Actually, I
called
can
from a
answer.
family member?
Do you want me to take that on?
Sorry?
You want me to answer that?
Sure, yeah, we're just kind of open up the floor for a conversation now.
I think what I see most with our caregivers is just this overwhelming sense of isolation, and they don't know, and technology is one of the only ways that we can connect with anybody, and technology can be very overwhelming for seniors. So I think maybe talking about that isolation and how to address it in the home would be pretty helpful.
So when we're looking at that, everyone's kind of in the same boat in a way, right? We all go to the store and come back. We're all afraid to get gatherings together. We're all afraid to touch our grandkids. There's such fear in this. And that I just want people to know that the isolation they feel is very real. It is a situation that we're in that we have no control over. So how are we going to find joy in the home, right? How are we going to find joy in the community? So what we have done is we have tried to maintain a certain realm of routine. We use music a lot. We use music to dance, to sing, to things like that are something that's so simple that brings joy to the soul and helps you forget about this for a moment in time, right? We have used music for showers. We have music for eating. We make sure that that they are finding joy, and that's one of the easiest things that we have found is impactful there. And I think it's underutilized in most areas. I think that just by being together, maybe having, I truly believe that people with dementia don't have this concept of time. If you ask them when was the last time they saw their family member, they would tell you, they don't know, but they may have seen them yesterday, right? So there's not a whole lot with there's going to be a decline because their routine has changed, right? That happens because their brains are trying to adapt to things that you and I can adapt to very easily. But for them, it becomes more and more difficult. So, but for you all as caregivers is where you need to kind of figure out a way to get some help in there so that you can get out and maybe find some joy in whatever it is you need to breathe, right? Whether that is having that one person that is not going out partying around town, that family member that may, be very, very cautious, or you have a caregiver coming into the home for companion and you're temping them every day, you're doing the best you can. Caregivers, the people in the nursing homes or communities, they're not the ones that are going to, we're going to bring it to them, right? So we do our best with our hand washing and our hygiene and cleaning surfaces and things like that. But bringing people in to help you so that you can get out is extremely important. And as this goes on, talking with people virtually is going to be huge because you got to express the depression you're feeling. You have to express and get out and have other people listen to you that know what you're going through is going to be extremely helpful in this age, because if you're bottling it in and you're just stewing in it and you start to really go down a deep hole, that's where you get into some trouble. So taking advantage of these virtual outlets, like these types of things. Some people are having virtual parties. Get your grandkids on the phone, put them on a virtual tea every Tuesday with little Sarah, and, stick to that pattern and have your daughter make sure Sarah's on that phone call, and you have the visual there. Continue to do it. When we first started the visuals, like FaceTiming, they didn't quite get it, but we continued because we knew this has to work, and they eventually got it, and it becomes they see their loved one and they light up, right? So you want to have that same thing too. You want to be able to see those grandkids. You want to be able to, as a care partner, be able to experience those things. It's just going to look a little different. But if we don't reach out and try and understand those systems, it becomes more and more difficult. And we're talking to people who are in their 80s sometimes that have never used the computer the way they are now. So your mind as a care partner and as a person, as an aging adult, is learning new things, and it's a good thing. It can be frustrating, but if you look at it as a positive, there are ways to connect with people without being in their space. Are we ever going to, we're not going to get that touchy feely back right now. It's just not going to happen. So we have to figure out ways to connect with them. And there will be a day, and don't ever lose hope, that one day we will have the opportunity again to be around our loved ones safely and so on. So hopefully, I don't know if that's helpful, but I'd love to know what people are doing in their homes. Does anybody have any suggestions?
So some of the things that I've seen around, and I feel like as this pandemic continues to go on, the term that keeps getting thrown around more and more is the COVID fatigue. And that the symptoms that I've read are very, very similar to the caregiver stress slide that you were talking about. Mm-hmm. So caregivers are already under immense amount of stress in their daily lives. And so to have this pandemic going on and on, it just compounds. Mm-hmm. And I just have the list of the symptoms. It's very similar to that slide you had. It's exhaustion, physical and mental fatigue, lack of energy, feeling constantly overwhelmed, sad or helpless, the inability to complete daily tasks, increased irritability, reduced work performance, and then even isolating from others. So we're supposed to be isolating, but then by isolating, we're isolating ourselves even more, if that makes sense.
Right.
And I think all of us are collectively feeling that. Yeah. And so just this thing that I have pulled up, it says some of the ways to combat this burnout is really taking care of yourself and finding that daily self-care routine in a way, and just finding ways to build yourself up and calm down and take a breath.
And there's no harm in communicating with your doctors on getting something to help you through this. Sometimes medicine is needed, and the older generation has always been suck it up, Nancy. You don't need to you don't need medicine. My generation, half of us are on antidepressants. So it's a cultural thing kind of thing where it's okay to talk to the doctor and say, look, I'm feeling very, very dark and I can't get out of this funk. I need, even I tried everything environmentally first, you're trying to get that routine where you're walking outside every day, or you're trying to, establish that routine to self-care. But then this overwhelming wave comes over you of fatigue, and it's easier said than done. But I think communicating with your physicians are going to be key here. Does that make sense, Darian?
Yeah, I think that's a great tip. And I'm just thinking of some of the physicians that we worked with in the past. Mm-hmm. They're so willing and open they want to help. That's what they're there for.
Right.
Some of the other, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say some of the other tips that I've heard and that I really like to share are researching and trying out new recipes. So I know that that's something that everyone's kind of been doing, and it's just a simple way to distract yourself for a minute though. And then you get some fun food, and there's always a way to get your loved ones involved when you're cooking, whether it's just sitting there and playing with the spoons, there's something that they can do to feel involved. Right. And you're activating all of your senses, your smell, your taste, your touch, and you're connecting with your loved ones. So I think that one's always a really fun and simple one. Yeah. And then some other ones is just meditation for yourself. If you're into that kind of thing, just taking a moment for yourself and counting to 60 and breathing. We've had several wellness workshops, and we love working with the yoga professionals, and they just talk about how important breathing can be and how different you'll feel after just 5 minutes of deep breaths and just being mindful and thinking of yourself, even if it's just 5 minutes out of your day, can really make a difference. Some other ones, of course, is the reading, podcasts, books, music, of course, is always such a great tool. Almost my whole life have grown up listening to music every day. Like music helps me personally. And so I know also it does, I like to say that music can be magical when it comes to dementia patients and anyone who is aging. It brings back the memories, and it really does. Like you see it at the Gathering Place. That's one of the programs Care Partners has. Well, music is one of the things we use every single time because you just see everyone light up and it's fun. And really, I think that's what's most important is finding the joy in the little things.
I agree.
Which is really hard.
Right.
But one thing, a good way to do that is to keep a journal, or every time you're happy about something, write it down on a piece of paper. I think I was talking to someone who said this year with their grandkids, they started doing one thing that you're grateful for a day, and you write it down and they're putting it in a jar. And at the end of the year, they're going to go back and read all of these things that they're grateful for. And so I think that's a really good way to just keep reminding yourself that it's not all bad. And like you were saying, there is still hope. There's always hope. You just have to keep reminding yourself that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And just find a little bit of joy every day, and it will compound. And I think we'll all get through this. And, I just want, my wish for everyone is that we get through this healthy, and we, and see the other side. So that we've seen the reuniting of families with our essential caregivers, and it is the most beautiful thing you can imagine. So there's a lot to be grateful for, even though it may not seem like it when you're in the home with your loved one and they're irritating you to death about how they're doing stuff. The fact that you're able to touch them still is a bonus, right? Those sorts of things, if you can, and try and find that in yourself to take that breath so you can see the good things, is going to be really important.
I think several of us here today are not in caregiving to a person with dementia. Part of my reason for wanting to be here was because I live alone. And when you live alone and you are in the isolation of a pandemic, it was really challenging at the beginning. I'm not a depressive person, but I experienced depression big time. And I didn't even know at first what it was, because I'm around people all the time. That's what I do. And all of a sudden that's gone. And it was a difficult time, but I so agree with much of what's been said with it's important we do something about it. And it's easy to turn in on yourself. I think that's part of what depression is you want to reach out for help, but the disease prevents you from reaching out for help.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so important that somehow we connect. And in my life, if I can do a plug, in my life, we have small groups here at church, our life groups, and my life group was a lifesaver for all of us. I lead a senior group, and we're all in our 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, and so yes, the technology issue.
Mm-hmm.
I get that big time, but God bless him. I had one gentleman who hung in with our life group. We could not hear him. He could hear us. And I mean, we stayed together for 6 months before his daughter got him a microphone, I guess, for Christmas. And then we could hear him. So we together. And we're not meeting right now. Actually, we're going to start very soon. And I miss that group so much because we said, sadly, this is the high point of our week, but it was, and we were kidding when we said that, because that kind of connection. So the virtual connections, they're not like sitting across the table from someone and giving them a hug. I get that, but I think they are very much lifesavers, especially for people who live alone. And I do caregiving. I'm a chaplain as part of my job. So that's where my caregiving comes in. And you find, though, I can relate to even some of the in-home care that you were referring to. You get so tired. Just the atmosphere itself, you get tired and you think, I don't know if I can handle this. And then something comes along like this last week. I think about the caregivers who, you're holding on by a thread, doing the best you can. And then there goes like how many catastrophes can I handle at one time? Kind of what it becomes like. I don't mean to be over dramatic about that. We are
It's
very,
reality. Absolutely.
yeah. And so that's a challenging thing. And, some of one of the resources that I'm not familiar with myself, and I just love the idea of it, is the community resourcefinder.org you mentioned. Seems like that might have something for all of us, not just dementia caregivers, but for all caregivers, and also just for folks like people who are alone in their homes right now and unable to connect in the ways that they're used to connecting. And it's a hard time.
For sure. Absolutely. And, I had colleagues who have contracted the disease, and they have to go home for 2 weeks. And by the end of those 2 weeks, they're going insane. They literally are like, this is ridiculous. And they get to feel it firsthand. They're away from their loved ones in their home because they can't be in the same room. And they're stuck there. And the toll it takes just in those 2 weeks is phenomenal. And this is something that's unprecedented. We have never seen something like, I have never seen something like this in my lifetime. And I think that it's something that we're all trying to adapt to and to live through as well as we can, right? And it's going to take a team of not only friends, family, and virtual reality. It's also going to take medicine and doctors and things like that. They go hand in hand here. And I think that we'll get through this all together. But there's so many good things that have come out here. I was able to FaceTime in a son to say goodbye to his mother as she was dying. That would never have happened if we didn't have iPads. That would never have happened if I didn't have FaceTime on my phone. I mean, the things that are going to come out of COVID are going to be phenomenal. And telemedicine is another one that I hope they continue on with, right? But just thinking about that in your own world as you're journaling things, what can make life better through this kind of thing, coming up with inventions of your own that you can share with people are going to be, you can absolutely, even though you're feeling that isolation, you can make an impact on the world if you come up with things that are going to make your life better in situations like that. And then you have to share it, right? So that other people can kind of come to what helps people get through these times and what's been beneficial, because there are some things that we're going to hold on to after this is all over,
Yeah, I think that the most, if I can use the word, one of the more hellish parts of the pandemic has been that isolation you just talked about at the end.
Yes.
Where families cannot be with loved ones. And it's just so heartbreaking for everyone involved. And what a blessing when there are caregivers as yourself, Denise,
Right.
that do everything they can to
Right.
make a connection at the end, even if they can't physically be present.
Right.
Because that is, I personally have not experienced that, but knowing people who have, it is absolutely, it's awful. It's a
Right.
terrible thing that we can't, a year ago.
They left them in a pretty decent state, right? When they left. And then, we try and connect them through social, through the virtual reality and stuff. And then they decline to a point where they're end of life. And then they're only called in for the last day or two. And it's only one family member per day. And so you have to choose amongst your family members who's going to go in and see mom and dad before they die. It has been an unbelievable road that I can't even tell you how stressful and sad some of this has been, for sure. And then you have people like yourself who are living on their own. And if you don't tell people you live on your own, or you don't, some people don't share that. Some people don't have a whole lot of friends. And then their only outlet was to do a couple things a week that have now been taken from them. And because of fear of dying, pretty much, if they got COVID-19. So there's just so much unknown with the disease at the beginning to where their guidance was, and to now it's, you know, you just have to be careful and keep your hygienics up. Is anybody, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's starting to open up a little bit. I mean, I had the vaccine, I had the second dose, and I don't know if that's even going to be helpful, but in my line of work, I'll do whatever I can to help people. But I mean, I see more people flying nowadays. I see more people on vacations. I think that people are also getting to a point where they are so depressed that they're like, I'm done, and I'm going to go to that supermarket and do the things I need to do. They just have to be more careful and so on. So as we've learned more about this, I've had people who have had COVID-19 with no symptoms go into a COVID unit, come out with no symptoms. It's bizarre. And then you have people who get COVID and they're on ventilators and pass away. And it's just, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But it's the reality that we're living in right now.
This week we hit the 500,000 number. Can you even imagine a 500,000?
Easy. Yeah.
Yes. In our country.
Easy. Yep. So, you know, hopefully just finding a little joy every day, and you know, reaching out to those folks that you think can help you, and not being shy to get that one or two people that you trust that can, you know, that they're the only people that are coming in and out of your home. Just like we do at our community, we've been successful. I feel we've been pretty successful, and we have people coming in all the time. So you just want to be asking those questions, taking those temperatures, and having that stimulation and for your loved one as well as yourself.
It's crazy to me the different levels of caution that we as human beings, I mean, even probably in this group, that we have. You know, some people, like, you know, are very comfortable just, you know, going to the grocery store, doing whatever, mask, but, you know, and then there's some of us who are just very hesitant about that. And obviously people have different reasons. Some people have medical histories that have to be cautious or whatever, but even just, you know, healthy folks out there in the world have such different views on what's safe and what isn't. And you're right. You kind of got to hook up with the folks that match you.
You hope for the best, and you hope for the best, right? Because we don't know, like if I'm in, you know, HEB and I walk by someone who may have just caught, who knows how you get it, right? Or if I touch that, you know, the worst place in HEB is that high touch where I put my code in for my debit card. They're not washing in between that. So it's important that people know not to touch your face afterwards, not to, like, you know, do all that, because that's one of the highest touched, and they're worried about plexiglass in front of me. No, like, you guys aren't washing in between this, and this is a huge, huge risk. So I think education is important, and then doing your best you can to, like, mitigate your exposure is all you can do. And you're human. Everybody's human. You cannot beat yourself up if you get this. You cannot beat yourself up if you bring it home. Like, there at the beginning of all this, that was my biggest worry, was like, what if I bring this to my residence, or what if I bring it home? And it's lessened throughout, because I feel more like I understand more and more that I don't have control over this. At the beginning, I wanted control. I have control. I'm not going to go anywhere. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to, you know, to work and back. And I still pretty much do that. But I understand now that if I do end up bringing it to my work or to my home, it's not my fault per se. I've done everything I possibly can to mitigate that. And if it comes, it comes. And I just have to pray that it's not going to, you know, take the life of someone I love.
That was one thing I wanted to add to was we need to remind ourselves in a way to kind of let ourselves off the hook. Like, we're all feeling this stress and isolation and loneliness and lack of control. And I think that's, for me at least, really hard to let go of and just accept. And just also, like, we're all surviving right now. Like, we're here. You have to pat yourself on the back and understand that you've made it this far. And that's an accomplishment too. And I like what you were saying about the support groups we've had, because we have our virtual support group once a week as well. And it's just a really fun place. Like everyone just talks and laughs, and they do talk about what's going on in the world, but they're doing it with friends and they feel they have that small connection. And we do have those people that come every single week because they say that this has been the lifeline through this experience. And so the virtual connections, as you were saying, I think can be so, so important and really change so much about your week and how you're feeling.
Yeah. And if we can embrace that, I think instead of thinking, oh, this is so hard to get on or to figure this out, we can embrace that and we can still see our friends and meet new people and do that. And then our support groups are completely confidential. So what's like Vegas, right? What happens in the support group stays in the support group. So you, by saying this is how you feel, you know, it's not going out to the community. It's just for you and your people online that are going to be supporting each other that way. It's beneficial and it gets it off your chest so that you can come back in a month later and then regurgitate it again. It feels better if you talk about it. If you're not talking about it, you know, then you start to internalize it and it becomes worse for sure. So it's just a matter of some people aren't support group people. And then some people are, and it's so hard to transition someone who's not, you know, to kind of get them to buy into it. Because they're just not communicators. And so they have to find other ways to connect with people. And then I would try and like really tap into my family members, the people I'm comfortable with, the people that I'm comfortable being around, and being able to talk to a certain family member, whether that's an aunt, uncle, brother, sister, whoever that person is in their life that they can meet with once a week just to talk about it, because they're not support group people, you know, so. Just to have that engagement is important.
Yeah, I think also, because humans are social creatures, like we're social by nature. So this really does have a bad impact on us when we're not able to communicate and connect. Like humans crave that connection. And so you just have to find that one person, I think, like you were saying, or the support group if that's more for you. One thing,
animals.
Yeah, I have my animals. I actually got a bearded dragon at like in November, and I called him my stress lizard. So whenever I'm too stressed about everything, I just go and take care of him.
It's true. Sometimes we see the lizard at staff meeting.
Oh, really?
It's actually kind of
fun.
It's cute. It's cute.
The animals are good for the soul, you know, and it gives you a purpose, and it's something you can bring into your home, and you know, you can share a lot with animals if you're living alone, right?
I know some people too, gardening, it's not exactly the same, but some people like love their plants like their kids, and just to see that they can grow something and that they have something to take care of.
Yeah.
Gardening is a really fun way too to get your hands in the dirt and feel connected with the earth a little bit. So if you do have a loved one who has either memory problems or anything like that, gardening can be a great way, again, because it's activating all the different senses, the touch, the smell, and they're just getting engaged with. So I always like to put that one out there too.
Yeah, no, that's great.
One of the things my family did in the very beginning was we developed a pod, and it was with our best friends, and we agreed that we were going to live with a certain level of discretion about, you know, safety and you know, what we were going to do and what we were not going to do, and that if any of us were exposed, we would tell each other about it. But that gave us the freedom to have an in-person relationship with them, you know, to have dinner together, to go on walks together, all kinds of things like that. And we probably, I think we started that over the summer because we kind of were seeing that this was going to be long-term, and that that our mental health needed that connection. And it helped. It made a huge difference in the health of my family, and in their health too. What I've been doing more lately is like Zoom lunches. Getting together with, you know, quote unquote, long lost friends or mentors or family. And you know what, we're going to put aside an hour and we're going to sit down and have lunch together on Zoom. And I connected with a woman, a former boss, pastor, mentor person of mine that I haven't spoken to in years this week. And I just felt seeing her face on the screen and hearing her voice was so cathartic. She is in the same exact situation the rest of us are in. She's dealing with pandemic and employment and caregiving and all of that. It helped me feel less isolated. And I know that technology is a huge barrier, but you know, Lynette, your story about the man in your group not being able to communicate for 6 months, you know, he was there though. He was there. He knew he was loved. He couldn't say anything, but he still felt a part of the community. And if we give ourselves enough grace to just mess up on Zoom, then it really can be a remarkable tool towards that mental health and that caring for yourself in isolation. So those are the things that have really helped.
I like the pod idea.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, we did the same thing this summer with about three other couples. And we were our little dinner pod, and we would just trade off having dinner at each other's houses. And because not a lot of other people were in and out of the house
Right.
at all, really, because we're all kind of old and we were just gathering together. And so that was really, really wonderful to be able to do that, to have that. And we were very careful outside, you know, what we did outside of our homes, out and about. But having our dinner party pod was just so wonderful. Yeah, so I was very grateful we were able to do that.
And it's not too late to build those,
No, it's not.
you know?
My parents have a golf pod. They have their golf gang.
There you go.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing, you know, it's just another couple that lives the same kind of procedures that my parents live, and it scared the mess out of me at first, I'm not gonna lie, but they have it's really helped them thrive and flourish, and it's been great for them.
Right. Because I think mental health is important here. And mental health is just as important as your physical being. It's part of your physical being. So whatever you have to do to maintain that, I think no one else can judge you for that. There should be no judgment at all, because we don't know what other people are going through. We don't know how this affects other people. And there have been suicides and things like that due to this, that, you know, if society just let it be sometimes, you know, not knowing what people are going through, the judgment needs to not be there. And even though these people are doing the best they can to keep everybody safe, you don't want them hurting themselves either. So I'm gonna start my own pod.
There you go.
Start my own pod. Oh man, that's great.
Appreciated the Caitlin's comment about how did you put it? Give yourself permission to mess up with Zoom. For my generation, I think that a lot of us were frightened by that, and you're exactly right. I can't even tell you some of the stupid things I've done on Zoom, and all of us in my life group, same thing, and yet it's worth it. I mean, we've learned, you learn so much, you know, each time you're on it, you learn something new, and to not be afraid of that, because I just see that as such a valuable connection tool for friends and for family. All of my family, immediate family, my children and grandchildren live out of state. And so, wow, I mean, without Zoom, there are grandparent apps you can get where you read a book with your grandchildren and you're literally turning the pages together on a tablet. I mean, there's so many ways that we can connect with technology. That's just going to have to be enough right now. And there'll come a time when we'll have more again. But right now, that kind of contact is limited. So
Right. My husband lost his father in South Africa this year. Not only are the borders closed, we can't you know, we couldn't bury his father properly, so we had a Zoom funeral. And my husband played professional soccer, so we lived all over the world. And I can tell you, there were people from all over the world on that call that would have never been at that funeral if it was live and in person. And it was really, really cool to be able to experience that with them when it would not have been possible, or we would never have thought of it if it wasn't a COVID year. So there's a lot of positives.
I hope things like that continue. Joyce, I interrupted you. I'm so sorry.
I was just going to say 2 weeks ago, my son got married and they had a live feed so that everybody that couldn't come to the wedding because of COVID were able to watch the ceremony.
Great.
And so that was nice.
Yeah.
Because we only had 40 people there. So it was really confined. And I have a really large family, so that helped them be able to enjoy that.
Yep, celebrate.
We've done that with funerals here too. It's kind of the new thing, you know, you have a very small family service, but then you video it and live cast it. And that's
We're not really missing those moments. We're just doing it differently.
Yeah. I need to say too, I mean, this is just an aside. Our church's experience has been really not a decline in attendance in worship because our online community has expanded so much. And we are, there are people in, I think, I don't remember the numbers, Pastor would know, but like, you know, 7 different states, 5 different countries worshiping with us on Sunday mornings. And I'm not crazy about online worship. Rather, I'd rather be there, and I'll take it any day of the week rather than nothing. And early in the pandemic, we spent some money to increase the cameras we have and such to increase. And so, yeah, I guess it's the same line. I probably need to quit saying right now, but I do really believe that technology has been a huge gift to us. I know that technology can be a curse also, but in my view, for the pandemic, it's been a huge gift that has helped us connect, especially those of us who live alone, in ways we never would have thought of before.
And it increases your brain health when you learn new things, right? So our seniors, if they're learning how to use their iPhones and they're learning how to use their computers with Zoom, it's only building their brain power going into their later ages, which is kind of cool, you know? And the fact that you can share your mission with more people because of technology is brilliant because you're reaching more people. My dad, he lives with me and he streams his every Sunday. And, you know, he used to go, but now he doesn't, but he still has access. And imagine how it's opened up that world to all those people that haven't been able to go previous to COVID even. Now they're able to be able to attend without leaving their home, where we used to have to bank on pastors getting out to their houses. But now we can actually, you know, get them right in through a video screen.
Yeah, I know a lot of, am I muted?
No, you're good.
Okay. A lot of folks have been concerned about, but we'll never get those folks back in church again. And I agree with Pastor completely. So what? Are they worshiping with us? Are they participating in the mission of our church? If they want to do that from their home, that's their business. I mean, I would love to see them in church just to have physical contact, but you know, that may not happen. I think it's been nothing but good. So.
I agree, Lynette. I mean, to me, a church structure, the actual physical church, whatever that is, you know, it's a tool. So use it as a tool. It's not, there's nothing sacred about, you know, brick and mortar. It's just, it's what are you doing with it? So, yeah, I think, you know, the more the merrier, whether they're sitting in the pew or not, or sitting on their couch, like I've been doing. Yeah. So, yeah, I agree. I think it's a positive.
That's been one thing that we've seen at Care Partners because we've been doing the online conferences last year. It's something that we wanted to do before the pandemic hit, but then the pandemic hit and we kind of switched our focus completely to online. But we were able to expand it so much. And we have people who watch our conferences from like California, Florida, Wisconsin, like people from all over are now able to get these resources for free, just at their fingertips and in their own home. And so it's been my whole job is like the digital side of things and the social media side of things. So it's been a really big learning experience for me, just trying to figure out what's the best way that we can still connect with people and share this really important information. And so it's definitely been stressful and hard and everything, but I do think what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That song, but I think it's so true. And I think that's what we're seeing through all of this. And we have to, like I said earlier, we have to remember that like we are surviving this and we're here and we're doing it. And we need to remind ourselves that that's a really good thing that we're able to do. And that we are a lot stronger, I think, than we give ourselves credit for.
Right. And there is hope. I don't want people to ever lose hope that, there will be one day where we'll be living with this and we'll be living well with it, where we're still with our family members, just like we do the flu, I hope, So knowing that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, letting the scientists figure out what it is that we're actually looking at and kind of, keeping ourselves as safe as possible while still keeping our sanity is key. So, we'll get through it.
So I want to read you guys something that a good friend of mine, I'm actually having this kind of a parallel conversation on Facebook talking about technology, about the difference between survival and thriving, right? Because we're all in this survival mode. And I just am feeling like I really would like to move beyond that and whatever that looks like during a pandemic. And my friend James said, during a particularly dark period a couple of years ago, my therapist asked me how I was surviving, and he said, not well. She then asked me questions. Are your children being fed? Yes. Are you able to keep your job going? Yes. Are you paying something on your bills? Yes. And then the therapist said, congratulations, you're surviving. Everything else is beyond survival. And I felt like that adds a perspective. We want to say that surviving means that life looks like it did before. Life looks like it did before caregiving. Life looks like it did before pandemic. We return to the past, right? But maybe thriving just needs to be reframed a bit. And when we put survival as the basics, then everything else is icing on the cake. Everything else. I went for a walk today. I'm thriving. I played in my garden today. I am thriving. And I think that if we can learn how to retool and reframe for a post-pandemic or pandemic, current pandemic frame of mind, that when we do make it through this on the other side, we're going to come out of it feeling like we did more than survive, that we accomplished survival, we accomplished thrive, we accomplished good things. I don't know, that just has been ruminating with me while we've been talking about this morning.
No, I like it. I think it's important for people to realize that, and to take it and run with it, because, there's so many other things that are going to come out of this that are going to be helpful to people. Because isolation has happened pre-COVID as well with some people. So figuring out ways to combat that or to help in any way is going to only benefit those who have struggled before as well as what they're doing now. So good.
I still have, oh yeah.
I just want to say a thank you to our presenter, Denise. Thank you so much for sharing. And also care partners for just the ongoing support that Caitlin and Darian have shown. They're the umbrella over which we do our caring ministry, and we appreciate them very much and appreciate the time that they take to put together workshops for us as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
We're so glad to be able to help provide this information, and we love partnering with you. So thank you for allowing us the opportunity, and thank you, Denise and Sana, for being here and helping us with the presentation today. We really, really appreciate it, and for everyone who participated and listened. And we thank you too for being here. And we just want to leave you with the message of hope and that you're supported. And one other thing I wanted to add to is we only have 2 coordinators right now, Nancy and Caitlin, but I'm sure that they would love to speak with you if you're ever feeling alone. And even me, like I would love to just have a conversation and be there and listen to whatever everyone's going through. So there is always support out there. And I just want to leave you with that, is that you're not alone and you're so much stronger than you think, and you will get through this.
Very good. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.